Christoph, for inviting me. And I would also like to thank my fellow panelists because I will try to build on the comments they have already provided. So I would like to briefly describe what are the challenges ahead of us and why, and this is important for me, innovation also has to take place in the way we are doing research. And second, I would like to bring 3 recommendations to this meeting where I think DeSIRA can really make a difference. So let me start with a brief description of where we are today, what are the global challenges. It's now 5 years since the SDGs have been adopted and since the agreement in Paris on the climate change treaty has been achieved. 5 years. And to be very frank, no country in the world, even before COVID, was on track to achieve these targets. We have learned that there are 2 overarching issues which are of fundamental importance when it comes to achieving both global agreements. It's energy and food. And from my perspective, food is the most complex and the most challenging one. And I'm convinced that without innovation and innovation in research, the way we are doing research, we are not going to achieve the SDGs independent of COVID. So what do we have to deal with? In food, we are dealing with an incredible complex and interlinked landscapes. We have to achieve healthy nutrition for all without undermining the natural resource base where we all depend on. Agriculture and food systems, they have to create jobs, and income for people. We have to adapt to changing climatic conditions. Access to markets has to be guaranteed, and we need cooperatives in order to balance the power inequalities. And in the last time, we have learned a lot about the danger of zoonotic diseases. So achieving food security, and this is what DeSIRA wants to support, means to deal with these incredible interlinked challenges. And my key message is that research so far was too much oriented in silos. The different disciplines in science brought great results. However, they didn't bring the results together in a way that it can change, that it can lead to transformation on the ground. And that's what I would like to talk about. And here I will start with my 3 recommendations. My first recommendations, colleagues from the DeSIRA projects, please have a look at what is currently happening under the headline, Building Back Better as a Response to COVID-19. We cannot talk about the DeSIRA project without considering what has happened with COVID-19. We are still in the middle of the pandemic. It's full of uncertainties. And the countries, the governments all over the world have invested so far around $9 trillion US dollars to counterbalance the economic effect of COVID-19. We need a serious analysis if this money is invested in building back better, or if it is supporting the old structures which have created the problems. So please try to apply the design of DeSIRA, transdisciplinary research, taking into account all forms of knowledge, multi-stakeholders, in identifying if we really build back better, because my big concern is that now a lot of money is spent, but it will go into the wrong channels. And therefore, my first recommendation is DeSIRA has to work on a better understanding of innovation in research. It's not additional money for different types of disciplines. It is a systemic answer to systemic challenges. My second recommendation is one of the most cross-cutting challenges ahead of us is adaptation to climate change. Adaptation to climate change means replying and responding again to systemic challenges. There will be droughts, there will be floods, we will have new patterns of pests and diseases. It will be too hot for people to live in certain areas. Whole ecosystems are going to change, and therefore adaptation to climate change has to be seen as a systemic response. I am not against better breeding efforts. Of course, we have to do more in plant breeding, But plant breeding alone is not going to solve the problem. We need systemic responses, and agroecology as a whole area of proposals of research can provide a systemic response to adaptation to climate change. And therefore, my second recommendation is, let us understand different systemic approaches as an innovation and as an innovative response to climate change. The report of FAO prepared by the high-level panel of experts on agroecology has outlined 13 principles. If you apply these principles to research, you will find new ways to respond to climate change, because climate change is a multiplier of already existing risks and it poses new risks. So systemic responses to climate change and to adaptation at the heart of DeSIRA. And my last recommendation is, and I was working on the TEEBAgriFood project. So far, many of the research efforts are concentrating only on increasing produced capital. And they are not looking at social capital, natural capital, and human capital. DeSIRA, in its design, has the big advantage that it supports also different types of capitals. I am convinced without social innovation, without creating enabling environments for farmers so that they can deal with the challenges, so that they can produce more and they have access to markets, research cannot be translated into reality. And therefore, DeSIRA should also look at the social conditions under which innovation can be applied. What works well in a laboratory does not always work well in reality. And sometimes farmers and multi-stakeholder platforms have better solutions if they get scientific support and we have an open-minded institution to support it. So overall, research and innovation have to be understood in a different way. And let me be very frank, I do not see that the current reform of the CGIR systems, the consultative group of international agrarian research systems and institutes, is really going in the right direction, because they are missing one issue. They don't provide systemic responses. And I think DeSIRA is a good example of how to provide systemic responses to global challenges. Thanks a lot.